What up, guys? We're 2.5 hours away from the season 2, episode 5 premiere. This is my second video of the day. If you haven't, go check out my season 2, episode 5 prediction video. This video is going to be a little bit longer, guys. It's going to be a dragon breakdown video. So, who rides which dragons as of season 2, episode 5? On this title slide, I included, the alpha dogs of each the alpha dragons of each side, Craxes in the red and Vagar in the green, and appropriately Vagar is green and Craxes is red. But I figured this would be a good time mid-season to check in and see who rides which dragons on which sides at this very point in time. As you can see under the video breakdown section is what I will be covering. So dragon ferocity on a scale of 1 to 10, as well as their overall ranking comparatively to the other dragons. I'm going to do dragon color, rough size, and age, their riders and current rider, and a fun fact for all of them, and I'll have quotes for the bigger dragons towards the end of the video, guys. I'm not going to use quotes on some of these because it'll be too spoilery for my next prediction videos. So for the younger dragons, I won't have a lot of quotes, but additionally, guys, I will be going again from strongest dragon to weakest one. Again, this is subjective. Some of it's not. Some of it's pretty objective, like Vagar being number 1, for example. But some of it's subjective up to what I think are the strongest dragons at this time. The ferocity section essentially is about how good they are at being big lizard nukes, meaning how good they are at war. Also for the size section, guys, I'm going to somewhat make that up roughly of what we have seen on the screen of the show. I'm just going to be kind of guessing, but it'll be like relatively comparable. It won't be like total nonsense in my opinion, but I am kind of guessing on the sizes there. I will also be including the riderless dragons, who should all have a rider by the end of tonight's episode. I will not be including the Cannibal or Grey Ghost in this because they do not have riders. But for the record, the Cannibal is supposed to be about the size of Vagar, if not bigger. So he is for sure a force and he eats other dragons, but unfortunately I'm not going to cover him because he does not have a rider. Meaning, again, I will start with Vagar. That one is pretty obvious, most ferocious. Additionally, I will not be including the deceased dragons, Cyrax, and Melees. In total, there will be 13 dragons I will be covering in this video. Let's get into it, guys. I'm excited for this. Put a lot of work in this one. All right, number 1, we got Vagar. This is pretty obvious. Always recommend reading the quotes I have on the screen. So clearly Vagar has a 10 out of 10 in ferocity. By this point in the time, she is, let's just see some crap. Let's just say that. She's seen some stuff, has been part of countless wars and conflicts in 129 AC. That would take almost a whole video itself describing how much Vagar has been involved in, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. Vagar has actually had 4 riders, the most of any Targaryen dragon that is still alive. That's fairly logical because she's the oldest dragon at this time. Her first rider was one of the conquerors in Visenya Targaryen. She and Vagar for sure did some damage during the conquest, and then after it in Dorne, I would recommend reading that quote to the left about the Val and Vagar. Her second rider was Balon Targaryen, Daemon and Viserys' father, and maybe Ulf the White's father too. Balon the Brave, who has been mentioned several times now in the show. It was actually said that Balon would fly Vagar with his 2 siblings, Aemon and Alyssa Targaryen. I'll talk more about them later. Her third rider was Laena Velaryon, who we see in the show. I did like how they had Laena die from being burned from Vagar. That's a change in the books. She just died in pregnancy, but I did like that change in the show. And finally, her last rider, obviously, is Aemon Targaryen, who we all know a lot about at this point, so I won't, go too much into Aemon. The fun fact I thought was pretty cool. I can't remember which book this was from, but Tyrion Lannister claims that Vagar was so big that you could ride a horse down her gullet. I thought that was kind of cool. And again, I use this quote for Vagar because I thought it really spoke to her ferocity. There was nothing that the Val could do to defend itself against Vagar. And this also speaks to what is going on now in the show with the Val and Lady Jane Eyre asking Rhaenyra to send dragon riders. After that, the Val knew they were screwed and gave up. That was Vagar's big first win. So there we go. That is Vagar. Who's number 2? It's pretty obvious, I would say. That's Caraxes. Again, always recommend reading these quotes, guys. I will be annoying about that. But Craxes is a little less than a 10 out of 10 because again, Craxes isn't very big, guys. He's only about 100 feet in size. Like Vagar is double the size of Craxes, but Craxes is just an aggressive dragon. Plus, he's been battle tested. Um, let's see, but I had to put my little red worm as number 2 because Craxes is probably the most aggressive dragon at this point, even more so than Vagar. And I just love how weird Caraxi looks. He's such a weird looking dragon. Also, notice how huge Vagar is. I know I already said this, but Caraxes is said to only be half the size of Vagar at this point. So Vagar really is really big. Again, she's 180 compared to Caraxes, who's only about 72 years old at this point. Caraxes had 2 riders, Aemon and Daemon Targaryen. Aemon was the father of Rhaenys and died in 92 AC, about 10 years before the Great Council, guys, which is the beginning of the show, the first scene we see in the show. Aemon was supposed to be the next king because he was the old king, Jaehaerys' eldest child. Unfortunately, he was killed by a Myrish archer in 92 AC on on Tarth, which is an island where Brienne of Tarth is from, off the Stormlands. During that time, Caraxes was told to have been grazing on some sheep when Aemon got shot in the neck by an arrow. But you could argue the reason I'm mentioning this is the event that actually led to the succession crisis of Jaehaerys, and it led to the Great Council of 101 OC. We see at the beginning of season 1. In 105 AC, Daemon claims Caraxes. So he actually claims Caraxes after the Great Council. Also, I thought this fun fact was nice and wholesome that they all 3 siblings, Jaehaerys' kids, rode their dragons from King's Landing, Dragonstone, and back and race each other. That's nice. I thought that was nice. Uh, besides the quote on the screen about Aemon bonding with Caraxes in 72 AC, it is said by one of the maesters that Caraxes particularly loved to burn, hence his nickname, the Bloodworm. So that's a pretty fun section right there, guys. Let's go to number 3, though. Number 3, Vermithor, the Bronze Fury. Let's get into it. So Vermithor is just probably a little less aggressive. He is bigger than Caraxes. Caraxes probably could take him one-on-one in a fight and win. His riders are Jaehaerys the First, the Old King, who famous Old King who we see, and Hugh the Hammer, guys. We're probably going to see that at the end of this episode. Again, check out my season 2, episode 5 predictions. That will be a fun. I think my prediction on that will come true at least. And Vermithor is the second largest and third oldest dragon during the dance behind Vagar and Dreamfire, and potentially the Cannibal. Vermithor is for sure a big boy, and he's about 100 years old. But I want to get into this quote, guys, on the left, too. This quote is referring to when Lord Rhaegar Baratheon essentially committed treason against Jaehaerys and Alysanne, and this would have been in, I think, 55 AC, so 80 years before the dance. He tried to undo their marriage because he thought it was bad and against the faith and incestuous, and there's a whole war with Maegor about that. That could take its whole video on itself, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. But Jaehaerys did not like that Rhaegar Baratheon, who was actually married to his mom at this time, tried to undo their marriage. So when the Old King found out about this plot, he brought Rhaegar to King's Landing and then essentially threatened. It might have been Dragonstone, so I apologize. I think he brought him. Maybe this was at Dragonstone, and then essentially threatened him with the Bronze Fury, Vermithor. He did not even need to take hostages. And at this time, usually if a lord committed treason against the king, they would take hostages, like Ned takes Theon, for example, after the Greyjoy rebellion 10 years before the start of the Game of Thrones. They'd take wards and hostages so those rebellious lords wouldn't rebel again because they have their kids. But he did not even need to take hostages because the Old King knew Rhaegar would listen through intimidation of the Bronze Fury, Vermithor. And again, guys, we will probably see Vermithor get claimed by Hugh the Hammer at the end of this episode tonight. So that is it on number 3. Let's get into number 4. Okay, Silverwing. All right. Okay, so really number 4, in my opinion, should be Sheepstealer, but I think they are cutting Sheepstealer from the show along with Nettles, unfortunately. I could be wrong on that one, but I'm confident that neither will be in the show. So Silverwing is the second largest female dragon behind Vagar and has and technically, it's probably no, yeah, I think she is because she's bigger than Dreamfire. So anyway, so Silverwing is the second largest female dragon behind Vagar and is a very close relationship with Vermithor. If you look at the fun fact, I think that's kind of cute and wholesome too. Like basically Vagar, or excuse me, Vermithor and Silverwing, their riders were both married, Jaehaerys and Alysanne. So they kind of were like married dragons. I thought that was kind of a cool little fun fact for you. They are roughly the same age, and since their riders, the old king and the good queen, were married, they were still kind of like dragon married. That's what I'm gonna call it, guys. Again, my prediction here is Ulf the White will claim Silverwing by the end of episode 5. And essentially what's going on in this quote, guys, with Silverwing is it's actually mentioned by Cregan Stark in season 2, episode 1, at the very beginning of season 2, that basically Silverwing wouldn't fly north of the wall, which is definitely illuminating, highlighting, foreshadowing to us that, you know, the wall is spooky and full of White Walkers and even dragons don't cross the wall. But again, Cregan even mentions this in episode 1. I do think you guys should all read that last part. I'll even read it out loud. I laughed about it when I came down again, so the Black brothers would not realize anything was amiss. But it troubled me then, and it troubles me still. So that's a pretty ominous quote right there, kind of spooky. That Silverwing wouldn't go north of the wall. Maybe probably going to get more into it later in the series. I think they'll speak to that more, but I could be wrong. But anyways, that's Silverwing, guys. We're at this was number 4, most powerful dragon. Let's go to number 5, guys, is the second most powerful green dragon, in my opinion, and that is Dreamfire. So we've actually seen Dreamfire once in the show, briefly in episode 6. When Aemon goes down to the dragon pit after being harassed with the pink dread by Aegon and Jacaerys and Luke when they're bullying him, he tries to claim a dragon because he doesn't have a dragon at this point in season 1, episode 6. The dragon he sees is actually his sister's mount, Helena, and Dreamfire roars with fire, causing Aemon to run away. And the cool thing about that is that we see in the show, after that scene, it cuts right to Helena, like, reading some prophecy about Aemon eventually claiming Vagar, which is kind of cool, actually. But yeah, I think we'll see. We've seen Dreamfire. We'd have to see her at least 1 to 2 more times, but Helena never really rides her. I still had to put her pretty high up, even though she's not a super war dragon, just because Dreamfire is like the second oldest dragon at this time behind Vagar. She was hatched in 32 AC. So she's 100 years old, basically, at this time. But anyways, it is pretty cool that Helena rides Dreamfire too, considering she is a dragon dreamer, so it is an appropriate name. Dreamfire is not a super powerful warring dragon again, but is so big that I again had to put her at number 5. Although it was previously believed that Dreamfire was the mother of Dany's dragons, we learn in the show that Dany's dragons were actually hatched by Cyrax. They couldn't have been hatched by Dreamfire because it's been confirmed that there's four eggs. I won't spoil what the 4th one is, but the 3 eggs were confirmed by a director to be Dany's eggs, and that must be by Cyrax because there's no way Dreamfire could hatch them. Dreamfire's in the dragon pit at King's Landing, and those were hatched on Dragon Stone, clearly. So we can assume now that Dreamfire is not the mother of the 3 dragons we see in Game of Thrones, but Cyrax actually is. So looking at the quote, the cool thing about Dreamfire is that she has been all over Westeros. The Westerlands, Riverlands, the Reach, etc. Honestly, other than Vermithor or Silverwing, Dreamfire might be up there as in like the amount of locations she's been in Westeros. In the quote, the rock refers to Casterly Rock, the home of the Lannisters and the capital of the Westerlands. Queen Rhaena Targaryen was the eldest sister of King Jaehaerys, the old king we see at the beginning of the show, and good Queen Alysanne. She and her other brother, Aegon the Uncrowned, guys. Aegon the Uncrowned. I know a lot of Aegons, but Aegon the Uncrowned tried to stop Maegor the Cruel from being king when he already was king during the 40s AC, like 43, 44 AC. During the time of the quote, the Lannisters were giving refuge to Aegon the Uncrowned and Rhaena for Maegor the Cruel. Eventually, Aegon the Uncrowned, Rhaena's husband, the older brother of the old king, was killed on his dragon, Quicksilver, by Maegor and Balerion. So Balerion, that was actually the first ever like true dragon to dragon battle in Westeros between Quicksilver and Aegon the Uncrowned, who's Aegon the Uncrowned, guys, is the eldest brother of Jaehaerys. So he's like the oldest brother of Jaehaerys. That's all I can say. But Balerion and Maegor actually kill him, and it's the first Westerosi dragon battle. Rhaena would die 30 years later in I believe 72 AC. So she just died of old age. But yeah, that is Dreamfire. But let's get into if I can switch the screen here. All right, so number 6 is Sea Smoke, guys. So Sea Smoke, we're going to see a little bit of a drop. Now we're in the 6s out of 10 in ferocity. So we do see Sea Smoke in the Stepstones doing war stuff, killing pirates and such. So I had to put him at 6, still behind Dreamfire, because Dreamfire is like 1.5 times the size of Sea Smoke. So even though Sea Smoke probably has more war experience than Dreamfire, I think Dreamfire would still be able to take out Sea Smoke. And again, Sea Smoke is definitely a war dragon at this point and will be freaking important in some future battles. So in the books, it seems that Laenor dies in 120 AC, but we find out differently in the show that he actually doesn't die, that Daemon and Rhaenyra kind of snuck him out because so they could get married for political purposes. And the reason we see in episode 3 of this season why Sea Smoke is freaking out, in my opinion, is because Laenor potentially died, and now Sea Smoke wants to find another rider, which I think he will at the end of this episode. And I think it, of course, will be Adam of Hull, who will eventually become Adam Valerion. But yeah, I think that's it for Sea Smoke. And yeah, I can't really go too much into this quote, guys, that you see in the obviously the Fire and Blood quote. It'll be way too much of a spoiler. That's like season 3 content. Let's get into the next number 7. All right, so we got Cyrax now, guys, or Cyrax, however you want to pronounce it. She's roughly 32 years old, hatched in 97 AC when Rhaenyra was born. She's about the same strength, I would say, as Sea Smoke. They're pretty similar in size. So Cyrax is actually the first dragon we see in the show. The second scene in HOTD, actually, she appears. For some reason, and others have noticed this too, but Cyrax does not seem to have grown over the last 15 to 20 years. So I think that is a bit silly, and I think a lot of other people agree with me. But Cyrax is thought to be set a little smaller than Sea Smoke. So for the riders section, guys, I am not going to spoil that, but pay attention to the Joffrey in parentheses. I think this is something we will see towards the end of season 3. That is all I will say around that. I could give you a quote about that, but again, it'll be much too spoilery in my opinion. And yes, Cyrax, like many other Targaryen dragons, are named after gods from old Valyria, so that is pretty cool. All right, guys, number 8, Tessarion. So we're at the third green dragon, and you're probably wondering something, but I'll save that for later. So I do have a bit of a bias here. I love Daeron the Daring. Daeron is the youngest son of Alicent and Viserys, and how Tessarion is described in Fire and Blood, I believe she will be even more beautiful than Sunfire. Claimed to be the most beautiful dragon to ever exist, according to the Maesters. Sunfire, not Tessarion. But in my opinion, Tessarion's going to be cooler looking than than Sunfire. Her wings were a dark cobalt, while her claws, crest, and belly scales were the color of bright beaten copper. Her flames were cobalt blue in color as well. So in the books, a lot of the dragons actually breathe the color, the fire like color of what their like skin tone is. So like Sarion would breathe blue, Cyrax would breathe yellow fire. So that's like kind of a difference in the books and the show. Daeron and Jace were actually born in the same year and were milk brothers, meaning they basically, you know what that means. I'm not going to get into it. All right. Anyways, Viserys did this intentionally because he wanted the two to grow up to be friends. Clearly that did not happen because Alicent and Otto decided to send Daeron to Old Town probably when he was like 5 years old. So in between the time skip of episode 5 and 6. Darren and Tessarion will not appear until season 3, but they will be a massive positive force for the Greens, especially in the Reach. Basically, besides Helena, Darren and Tessarion are going to be like change our perspective, I think, on Team Greens because they're very like Darren is someone you could definitely root for. I think that's how George writes him in the book, and I'm pretty sure they'll keep that similar. Like Darren and Helena are like the ones you can root for on Team Green. Everyone else kind of sucks. But Darren, I think, will be similar to Jace in my opinion, like personality wise. So we will see Darren in season 3. All right, guys. Now we've moved on to like the smaller dragons at this point. I mean, Vermax and Tessarion are probably the same size as well, Moondancer. But the reason, guys, I'm not going to really have quotes from here on out is because I'll have prediction videos with quotes around these dragons, and I don't really want to spoil those for now. So we'll just get into kind of the basics of their ferocity, color, size, age, rider, fun fact, etc. So Vermax is probably about as powerful as Tessarion and as powerful as Moondancer, who we'll see in the next bit of this section, next bit. And actually, the cool thing about Vermax is he is green and a pale orange. So he's the only orange dragon that's described in the books, I believe. And we do see him in season 1, episode 6, when Jace is trying to train Vermax with the Dragon Keepers alongside Aegon, Aemond, and Luke. He's, again, probably about 50 feet, 20 to 30 feet smaller than Seasmoke and Cyrax, for example. And he was hatched when Jace was born in 114 AC along with Darren. So Darren and Jace were both born in 114 AC, and both Vermax and Tessarion, we can assume, were hatched during that period. The only rider of Vermax ever was Jacaerys Velaryon. And according to book canon, Alicent and the Greens did not think Jace and Luke's eggs would hatch because they were bastards. But what they didn't realize is it's not about bastardry. It's about if your mom or dad is a Targaryen, and their mom was for sure Targaryen. So that is it on Vermax. We will get number 10 now. All right, guys, we are at number 10, the 10th most powerful dragon of the 13, Moondancer. So we did get a pretty cool shot of Moondancer in the season 2, episode 3. I thought that scene was actually sick. Not in the books. Very well done. Made Baela look like a badass. Made Moondancer look like a badass. Anyone else think that Moondancer kind of looks like Vargar? I think Moondancer is the that would make the most sense. I think they might even illuminate to that Moondancer is the daughter dragon of Vargar. She's pale green. She's a little smaller than Tessarion and Vermax, about 45 feet. And again, she was hatched when Baela was born, like most of these later dragons. I'm in 116 AC, so she's about 15 years old, 14 years old at this time. Her only rider was Baela Targaryen. And in the book, Moondancer was not even big enough to ride at this point in time. They actually changed it for the show. I do like that change. And again, guys, I will not have a quote, unfortunately, for Moondancer because a lot of these quotes will be either too spoilery or I will need them for my next prediction videos. But yeah, Moondancer definitely, I think, is one of my theories is definitely one of Vagar's baby dragons. I think it looks like Vargar. Let me know in the comments if anyone else agrees. But that is number 10. We will move to number 11. All right, number 11 is Tyrax. Now the ferocity, guys, as you can see, will really start to drop. I would say he's about a 3 out of 10. He's a pretty small dragon. We do see Tyraxes, but not really see him in episode 3. He and Stormcloud are in this like weird dragon keeper cage thing, and they're being carried off to be taken first to the Val. Tyraxes will stay in the Val, and then Stormcloud and Aegon and Viserys and Rhaena will eventually go to Pentos. But Tyrax's color is never really firmly described, but in some sources is said that he's a dark pink dragon. Tyraxes again is being sent to the Vale to protect it. Even though Tyraxes is really small at this point, we know that Jane Eyre wanted a dragon to protect the Vale. So Rhaenyra's logic here, guys, is essentially we can't send any of our big grown dragons there because we need them to war against the Greens. So she sends 2 small dragons, Tyraxes and Stormcloud, and he's thinking that'll be okay with Lady Jane. So we'll have to see. I think we could potentially see that maybe tonight too as well. Lady Jane Eyre and the whole Tyraxes, Stormcloud, Rhaena, Viserys, Aegon, Joffrey, combination or whatever is going on there. But that is Tyraxes. We will move on to 12 now. All right, now guys, we're at the pretty small dragons. The last one might be a little shocking to you, but I have some logic obviously behind it, and I think most people agree. But we're at a 2.0 out of 10 now. So Stormcloud is really tiny. Stormcloud is probably half the size of Tyraxes at this point. We did see Stormcloud again in episode 3 go off with Rhaena, Viserys, Aegon, and Joffrey off to the Vale and Pentos. He's probably about 4 to 5 years old in the show. We can assume he hatched in 124 AC. In the books, we know that he hatched around 120 to 122 AC, so a slight difference there. So Stormcloud will be the youngest dragon at the beginning of the dance. And guys, I'm not going to lie, I really think, and I'm really hoping, this is in my prediction video again, please check it out. Season 2, Episode 5 predictions. I do think we will see Stormcloud at the very, very end of this episode. Basically, that's all I'll say. You can watch my season 2, episode 5 prediction, but the image gives you something that'll be going on. But in that image, Aegon looks like he's 7 to 10 years older than he actually is in the show. But that's all I'll say for that. That's all I'll say for that now. Let's move on to the last one, guys. All right, guys. So Sunfire, number 13. Why do you think that is? And again, before I get into this, sorry, guys, no quote here. I've kind of exhausted my quotes on Sunfire and Aegon before I want to spoil too much for either this season or next season. So no quote here again. But yeah, so Sunfire's ferocity right now is probably a 1.0, if that, out of 10. He is hurting pretty badly, as we can see. So Sunfire and Aegon, guys, they're not dead. I said that in my season 2, episode 5 predictions. There's no way they're dead. You can actually even hear them breathing, both of them at the end of the episode, so you can kind of assume they're not dead. But Sunfire, Dreamfire is Helena, the wife of Aegon, so Sunfire, Dreamfire. That's kind of fun. He is golden pink. He's about 60 feet large, and he was hatched in 107 AC when Aegon II was born. So he's about 22 years old. The only rider is Aegon, and Sunfire is said to be the most beautiful dragon Westeros has ever seen, according to the Maesters. Additionally, another fun fact for you is Sunfire actually grew at a very fast rate. So, like, when Sunfire was like 20, he was pretty big. Like, actually, you know, in the last episode, you see Sunfire. He might look small, but Meleys is also like 70, so Meleys is huge this time. So he's actually not that small. Like Sunfire is like only like 5-6 years older than Vermax or Tarion or Moondancer, and he's significantly bigger. So that's like, I think, kind of a cool little fun fact that he grew really fast. But that's it today, guys. I hope you appreciated the video. Those are the 13 dragons I broke down. We got 4 on Team Green. We got 9 on Team Black. But again, guys, Vargar is like the equivalent of probably Cyrax, Sea Smoke, Moondancer, and Tyraxes and Stormcloud all put together almost. So it's kind of even at this point. But anyways, guys, look out for my season 2, episode 6 predictions video next week. And I appreciate you all for tuning in. Please like and subscribe if you can. That's it for me.